Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's movie talk. I know I've been gone for a very long time, but this summer's been very busy for me. I've had a lot going on, but I hope to get movie talk, up every week at Wednesday, from here on out. So just be prepared for that. It is coming back, hopefully weekly. This weekend saw the debut of Alien Romulus, which actually did pretty well. That has been a common thing in the trades. Is this opening good or bad? But it's very good. And let's just get right into it. Number one, you had Alien Romulus, which opened to 42 million. Now, that might not look like an impressive number, but it's actually the second biggest debut for an Alien movie of all time. Alien Prometheus opened to 50 million. That's still the biggest opening. Way back in 2012, an Alien Covenant in 2017 opened to 36 million. So this is better than that. And I think that's pretty impressive because Covenant was a very, very toxic word of mouth kind of movie. But this movie's actually had pretty good word of mouth. B+ cinema score, very good reviews. But the real story with this movie is the worldwide debut, 110 million. When the estimates came out, it was 108, so it's actually gone up. It's 110 million. That is insane. Nobody expected this to do that well overseas. It particularly did well in China with a massive $24 million debut. Which, again, may not sound impressive, but most movies, Hollywood movies that have come into China this year have crashed and burned. With the exception of Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine, and, just there's like a couple exceptions, they have not done well. So the fact that Alien Romulus was suddenly able to connect with the Chinese audiences is very impressive. And it's actually holding really well day to day. So Alien Romulus has a lot of momentum there, a lot of gas there. This opening is very, very good. 42 million is like, but it was expected to have an opening with a 3 in front of it, and it ended up having an opening with a 4 in front of it. So it's overperforming. And that could be due to the reviews and the good word of mouth, by the way. And, on the dailies, it has been doing very well. I think on Monday, it did very well. Yesterday, it did very well. So, yeah, that's about it with Alien Romulus. It's a very good debut. Very good for the future of the franchise. But there is a question of what will the final total be? And the movie only had an $80 million budget. So $110 million was already above that. And the general rule of thumb is that for a movie to make its money back, it's got to do 2.5, maybe 3 times its budget. So that means the break-even point for Alien Romulus is like 220, maybe 260, somewhere in that range. And I think 110 million is about where it'll end up domestically, which is ironically where it opened with this weekend, globally. And I think globally it'll probably end around 330. Coming in at number 2 this weekend was Deadpool and Wolverine, which is in its 4th weekend. It added another 30 million, dropping 44%. Now domestically it has made 546.8 million. And overseas has made 596.8 million for a global total of 1.144 billion. The question here, though, is pretty much where will it end up? It is already the number 1 highest grossing movie for an R-rated movie. It has been the number 1 highest grossing movie for an R-rated movie. Overseas, it actually still has quite a bit to go before it can top Joker. But, because the domestic number is so much higher, it's already number 1. But I think, based off of its trajectory, it is probably going to end its run somewhere between 620 to 630 million, which leaves about another $70-ish million on the table. maybe 80. Like 70 to 80 million left on the table, which I think, would be very good. That would be above The Last Jedi. It may go above the Avengers at this point. It's going to be very close with the Avengers, but it's doing well. That's the main takeaway from this. It's doing very well. It's an Avengers level event. Worldwide, I think Black Panther is probably its closest comp. It's actually tracking pretty well at this point with Black Panther. It opened bigger. Black Panther has closed the gap, though, if you compare them week to week, because Black Panther was a leggier film. So the question here is, will it be able to top Black Panther? It needs about another 200 million. It made about 60 million, like 65 million globally this weekend. So it definitely has a shot to do it. Coming in at number 4, we're going to talk about number 3 in a little bit when we talk about the overall top 10. But number 4, I think, is the bigger story because Twisters has had incredible holds week to week. It made another $10 million just this weekend in its 5th weekend for a domestic total of $238.6 million. That number is important because that makes it pretty much about where the first Twister made way back in 1996. So there is this little thing called inflation, but Hollywood doesn't like to talk about inflation. So in the trades, when it does top Twister, it will say, Twisters tops Twister. Like Twisters, surpasses that movie. Overseas, though, this movie has a real issue. In 5 weeks, it actually opened a week early overseas, it is only at 95 million. Now, it did make 5 million overseas this weekend. So it is definitely going to get to 100, maybe even 110, 115. But it's already open everywhere. I think there might be like 1 or 2 small markets it's got to get to. But it's already open everywhere. In China, in the UK, and Europe, and Mexico, everywhere. So 95 million is really a very low number. I mean, most movies can sail past that number. So yeah, it's weird because the first Twister did about equal business than domestically and overseas, but this one is very, very heavily domestic, and I can understand it because it's a very like Midwest type movie, so maybe it's just like too American. But Top Gun Maverick did well overseas, and that's like the most pro-America film ever. So I don't know. It's very, very weird that this movie has not done as well overseas. Like, it should be, closer to a 60-40 split. 60% domestic, 40% overseas for an American Central film like this. It's 70-30. It's more like 75-25. Most blockbusters, though, have like a 40-60 split, 40% domestic, 60% foreign. For, American-centric films, it can be 50-50, even 60-40. So it's interesting. But at number 8, the movie I'm really highlighting this weekend because of how insane it has done, in its 10th weekend, Inside Out 2 made another $3.47 million this weekend, dropping only 28%, and domestically is now up to $642.5 million. And, I'm going to show you in graphs just how impressive these numbers are. Overseas, it is at a whopping $985 million. And just this weekend, it added $12.4 million overseas. It is doing incredible business, making it pretty much guaranteed it's going to cruise past $1 billion overseas. For weeks, people have been speculating, will it get to $1 billion? Will it end in the 900s? Where will it end up? And it's very interesting. I mean, I don't think anybody expected this. I mean, there were a lot of people who thought it would get to 1 billion worldwide because of the hype nature of the film. But nobody expected this to get to 1 billion overseas, let alone 640 million domestically. And look at that worldwide total, 1.628 billion. That is, I'm going to show you how crazy that is. Domestically, Inside Out 2 is already the 11th highest grossing film of all time. And you can see number 1 through 10 are all like event films. You know, you have Avengers Endgame in there, Spider-Man No Way Home, Star Wars, Avatar, Top Gun Maverick, Black Panther, a cultural phenomenon. Avengers Infinity War, Titanic, another cultural phenomenon. Jurassic World, you know, the resurrection of a very beloved film. Even Barbie, cultural phenomenon from just last year, number 12. Inside Out 2 is number 11. That truly makes this movie a cultural phenomenon. In Mexico, by the way, you know, I just want to throw this out there. In Mexico, it's already made 102 million in 10 weeks. So I say already, but 102 million? It is the very first movie in Mexico to crack 100 million. That's insane. And right now, Inside Out 2 is almost guaranteed to pass Jurassic World to be the 10th highest grossing movie of all time. Domestically, worldwide, it's already there. I believe 2 weeks ago, it was able to overtake The Avengers to become the 10th highest grossing movie of all time. The Avengers! The freaking Avengers. And you can see at number 9, you have The Lion King. 1.663 billion. Now, most people do not include The Lion King as animation, but it is technically an animated movie. So if Inside Out, and it's only $34 million behind The Lion King. And it made $16 million globally this weekend. So Inside Out 2 is virtually guaranteed to pass up The Lion King to become the queen of animation. And Jurassic World, by the way, it's also virtually guaranteed to pass up that movie. I mean, overseas has dropped 20%, like less than 20% per weekend, every weekend, basically since it came out. I think there was like one weekend when Despicable Me 4 came out that had a bigger drop, but it's had phenomenal holds. It is an overseas juggernaut. And the international all-time, Inside Out 2 is at number 12. And the 11 above it are almost all event pictures. I mean, with the exceptions of like Furious 7 and Fate of the Furious. But even Furious 7 was buoyed by the death of Paul Walker, and Fate of the Furious was, you know, the next movie after. So, Inside Out 2 is just a phenomenon. 985 million. I mean, Avatar, over 2 billion. Avengers Endgame, almost 2 billion. I mean, this movie will join the international billion-dollar club, which is very rare. Only 11 movies have passed 1 billion, and this will do, and Inside Out 2 will be one of them. As for the domestic top 10, It Ends With Us is at number 3, and that movie dropped just 52% in its second weekend. The reason why that's impressive is because almost all romance movies of this type drop 65% or more. You know, Twilight, you know, all based on books. Twilight, 70%. Fault in Our Stars, 70%. Even Harry Potter. Almost all Harry Potter movies dropped in the 60s. You know, like, the only exceptions with, like, you know, book movies like this would be Hunger Games. They almost all dropped in the 50s. The Ballad, you know, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes dropped, like, in the 30s. But that's an incredibly impressive hold for that movie. Coraline at number 5 for a re-release. That is incredibly impressive. You know, you see Despicable Me 4 there, you see Trap, you see Borderlines, which is colossal failure. I mean, that movie cost $110 million to make. And so far, domestically, it's only made about $13 million. And worldwide, it's only made about $20 million in 2 weeks. That's a disaster. As for the domestic top 10 overall, number 1, you got Inside Out 2. Number 2, you got Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 3, Despicable Me 4. Number 4, Dune Part 2. Number 5, Twisters. Number 6, Godzilla X Kong. Number 7, Kung Fu Panda 4. Number 8, Bad Boys Ride or Die. Number 9, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And number 10, A Quiet Place Day 1. And for the worldwide top 10, number 1, Inside Out 2. Number 2, Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 3, Despicable Me 4. Number 4, Dune Part 2. Number 5, Godzilla X Kong. Number 6, Kung Fu Panda 4. Number 7, Bad Boys Ride or Die. Number 8, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Number 9, Twisters. And number 10, Quiet Place Day 1. The interesting thing here is that the domestic top 10 and the worldwide top 10 are the exact same. No differences. They're the exact same. So, yeah. And there's no major movies coming out this weekend, so I am going to skip that one for the purposes of this video. But yeah, I mean, that is this weekend's movie talk, and I'll see you next Wednesday.